Hey, Internet friends, do you believe that Americans of any race should be able to purchase land, build homes, and live in their own racially exclusive community? Why or why not? I've seen this story talked about for the last week because of the viral piece that Sky News did on the group Return to the Land, which has established a whites-only community in Arkansas with plans of expansion. According to their website, Return to the Land is a private membership association for individuals and families with traditional views and European ancestry. And their mission is to, quote, return to the land to separate ourselves from a failing modern society. And we will make positive cultural changes in ourselves and in our ancestral communities, end quote. Once you're a member, you can buy LLC shares tied to private plots rather than directly purchasing real estate, and you can start building your own home. Right now, about 40 people live in the first phase of their development. They're building their own houses and working the land. Now, I want you to take a listen to the framing and word usage and overall tone coming from this news segment.
A group of white supremacists has founded a 160-acre settlement in the Ozark Hills for white people only, and it's called Return to the Land. And it explicitly bans Jewish people, LGBTQ individuals, and anyone who isn't a white Christian of European descent.
But this is built on a radical modern premise, made possible because of a new political and technological moment. One with strong ties to the most active far-right groups in the US. Instead of taking to the streets, they are building their own, for generations to come.
Okay, you got that? Now let's compare the news coverage of Return to the Land to a 2020 news story about Black families who bought 97 acres in Georgia for people of color.
My name is Renee Walters, and I am the president of the Freedom Georgia Initiative. I have a Black husband. I have a Black son. Every time he would leave out for work or just to go to the store or anything, I would have a sense of anxiety. Black men being murdered on national television in front of everybody, it kind of just all shook us by storm. It's now time for us to get our friends and family together and build for ourselves. That's the only way we'll be safe. That's the only way that this will work. We have to start bringing each other together.
There's a real difference in the tone and encouragement and everything. There's even upbeat music playing in the background of the Freedom Georgia story. By the way, a little update on this Freedom Georgia story. It's been 5 years since the story came out and no housing has been built and no community has been established. It was never developed, even though there were sponsors and everything. It's just a campsite, but apparently the campsite has been expanded to 500 acres, so good for them. So I can't hate, can I? That's 500 more acres than I have. Yeah, am I a little jealous? Yes, but you see my point. These are similar concepts being proposed here. It's a parallel story, but since white Christian men are behind one movement, it's deemed hateful. They're compared to the Nazis. They're called every name under the sun and told not to be offended because if you're offended, that's white fragility. But what's unconstitutional about choosing to live among people who are like yourself? Everyone who's anti these white communities wants you to take a stroll through history to understand why marginalized communities might feel afraid of all white communities, which I certainly take under consideration. But if I stroll far enough back, America, as we know it, wouldn't exist without intentional white European communities who sacrificed everything they had, left everything they knew to come over here and build this civilization that's been the marvel of the modern world. Racial tension has been stoked by the media for over a decade now in the U.S., and by that I mean very intentionally stoked. And like always, the pendulum has swung one way, and now it's swinging right back. Again, a little historical stroll. Back when the whole George Floyd Summer of Love was happening, do y'all remember the media promoting the idea of people of color needing their own spaces? It was said that the POCs needed places where they could gather and be free from mainstream stereotypes, where they could be their own authentic selves without the judgment of the straight white Christians, particularly the white man. POC-exclusive spaces became the norm on liberal college campuses, and mainstream outlets served as platforms for promoting the establishment of them, even in the workplace. But
if y'all didn't know, this is the MSC, and frankly, there's just too many white people in here, and this is a space for people of color. So just be really cognizant of the space that you're taking up, because it does make some of us POCs uncomfortable when we see too many white people in here. It's only been open for 4 days, and frankly, there's the whole university for a lot of y'all to be at, and there's very few spaces for us. So keep that in mind. Thank you.
Back to the present. In order to be granted membership to Return to the Land, you have to first fill out a questionnaire and then get an interview with them. The questionnaire is what you'd expect. Tell us about yourself, what skills you have, your political and social views, your ancestry, the ancestry of your offspring and your spouse. Tell us if you're rolling with the LGB, work for the government, or if you're a felon. Finally, let's see if you have any conflicting political views. Do you support gay marriage, transgenderism, foreign immigration, the COVID vaccination and mask mandates, abortion, segregation, multiculturalism? Share your religious and philosophical views. And how often do you think about the Roman Empire? There's an interview process after you do the questionnaire, then a small membership fee, then you can start purchasing the plots. Additionally, Return to the Land claims they plan to coordinate homeschool groups, healthcare networks, and legal advocacy groups. So naturally, they're being investigated by the government. And look who it is, the Anti-Defamation League, the propaganda arm of the Jewish secret society B'nai B'rith, which was originally created 100-ish years ago to protect a murderer and pedophile in a pencil factory, Leo Frank. Of course, were one of the first ones to have a problem with Return to the Land. Lindsay Bach-Friedman, the ADL regional director of the South Central region, said that the group's efforts revive discredited and reprehensible forms of segregation and should be illegal under federal and state civil rights laws, as well as under Arkansas's Fair Housing Act and the Fair Housing Act of 1968. Quote, we urge the Arkansas Fair Housing Commission, local elected officials, and law enforcement to act swiftly to ensure that Northeast Arkansas remains a welcoming and inclusive community, not a refuge for intolerance and exclusion, the ADL said in a statement earlier this month. Not really sure how Return to the Land is denying people housing when they bought undeveloped land for people in their private membership association to build houses on. Also of note, intentional self-separation is not the same thing as forced segregation. I recommend touching grass. Lindsay Bach-Friedman, you and your complicated little name. Israel is an ethno-state, by the way, which is the funniest part because Return to the Land is literally the slogan of the Zionist movement. Since Return to the Land has announced they want to expand into Missouri, Missouri Democrats are acting like they're mad, with Chelsea Rodriguez, communications director for the state Democratic Party, calling Return to the Land a hate group and said it won't be welcome in Missouri. Quote, Missouri families are fed up with the fringe extremism Missouri Republicans keep inviting into their communities. If this hate group tries to relocate to Springfield, they shouldn't expect to be embraced, Rodriguez said in a statement. Missouri Democrats have a clear message for any hate groups eyeing our state. This is our home. We were raised here, and we share the same respect for the Constitution and Second Amendment as our neighbors. Your hate has no place in our home, she continued. Other Missouri Democrats like state representatives Jeremy Dean and Betsy Fogel basically echoed the same talking points that Return to the Land is a hate group and they're unwelcome in Missouri. There's also certain people in certain groups saying that what Return to the Land is doing is illegal and that their community violates the Fair Housing Act of 1968 and Civil Rights Act of 1964. By excluding based on race and religion, but Return to the Land says they have a team of lawyers and believe they have taken the right steps to make what they're doing totally legal. By the way, Borough Park, New York has 117,000 Orthodox Jews living among each other on 3.3 square miles. They even have a taxpayer-funded police force, y'all, serving and protecting other Orthodox Jews. And I'm supposed to care about these 40 people in Arkansas, these 40 white people who want to live together. Like, I don't care. I mean, wasn't Freedom, Georgia totally legal? You know, the group of black people in Georgia who purchased all that acreage. Are we just moving away from legality and entering the waters of feeling and emotion? Is that the real issue here? Freedom, Georgia. And I don't mean to pick on these people. I don't have a problem with what they're doing. I'm not trying to pick on them, but it is the parallel story. But they can do their thing and have an exclusive racial community because of trauma. And they end up with all these sponsors on their website like NASCAR. People who oppose these white-only communities bring up racial trauma and the dangers of sundown towns. But we could go back and forth all day, honey, because it's not like whites feel safe either when millions upon millions of illegal aliens are here in this country, making our towns and our cities less safe. And the current climate of hostility towards white folk is perpetuated by the media, academia, and politics. Talk about a stroll down memory lane. I remember back during George Floyd's Summer of Love, entire blocks of Atlanta being shut down and off limits to white folk. There were armed black protesters at checkpoints if you needed access to the area. And if you were whitey, you were turned away upon threat of being shot. I think I did a couple of videos on this as it was happening in July of 2020 and never heard any follow-up on it. And by the way, a little black girl was shot in the backseat of her parents' car because they went past this checkpoint, this protest area, without stopping. But anyway, that's an inconvenient truth. There was no media coverage of that, no justice for that little girl. And the media created all of the events that led to her death. Were they held accountable? No, of course not. I usually stay away from stories like this because this is federal agent bread and butter. Historically speaking, feds love to infiltrate these movements, no matter which side, and they design them to fail. Where you hitch your wagon to it, it sounds good at the start, and then it just ends up embarrassing. And I'm not saying this is what's happening, but the feds like to collect all this information and put everyone on a list who joins whatever movement and call the media and stage events to push legislation and tighter top-down control. In a problem reaction solution, expand that budget so we can put another ADL office in your town kind of way. I personally think if Return to the Land, if they were just, low key and didn't let Sky News come out and just took a page out of the Amish book, we wouldn't be talking about this in a video right now. But that's just me and my universal policy of always being hostile towards British media. What do you think, internet friends? Do you believe that Americans of any race should be able to purchase land, build homes, and live in their own racially exclusive community? Freedom of association? Let me know. I look forward to reading your comments. Thank you so much for watching, subscribing, and supporting my channel on Patreon. Share this video if you liked it, and please buy my book, The Deep State Encyclopedia. Bye.